Welcome to the Science of Parenting podcast, where we connect you with research-based information that fits your family. I'm Lori Cordles, parent of 3 in 2 different life stages. 2 are launched and 1 is still in high school, and I'm a parenting educator.
And I'm Mackenzie Johnson, parent of 2 littles with their own quirks, and I'm a parenting educator. Today, we'll talk about the realities of raising a family and how research can help guide our parenting decisions. Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Hey, welcome. Here we are in regulation.
Yes, season 9. Still going. There's more to say.
There is more to say. So much more.
Yes. Well, and last week we were looking at those developmental tasks. That was just a mouthful all of a sudden. But what are the things that our kids are working on when it comes to regulation based on their age, right? What our toddlers are doing with regulation looks a little different than what our preteens are doing with regulation. And the other thing we talked a little about dysregulation, which I kind of feel like maybe we'll talk about again this week with temperament.
I think so too. So yes, today we are really going to zero back in on the research of Chess and Thomas and look at temperament and how it really does play into our season topic of regulation. And you might be thinking, okay, didn't you just have 2 full seasons on temperament?
What else do you have to say? A lot.
We
have a lot.
We tackled it just by the 9 traits themselves. We tackled it by the age of the child. And honestly, it's because we believe that learning about and understanding temperament is one of those really key essential pieces to understanding our children. And especially when it comes to guidance and discipline. Ooh, absolutely. It is a huge piece of understanding who our kiddos are. So that's why we're going to talk about it again.
Yes, there's more to say, and I think it's so interesting to think about it. We've looked in the broad sense, like how temperament affects different things or what it is, and to look at it specifically and how our kids regulate and how it looks different. And I think every trait gives a little bit of a different piece of the puzzle in regulation. So but we better remind everybody, right? It has been a little bit.
It has been a little. It's been a minute, right? So every child is born. Remember that every child is born with this individual way that they approach the world. And that's kind of what we call temperament. So it shapes the child's behavior. It really shapes their development in a significant way. And it really helps us understand, which is important as we think about nurturing healthy development of our children. And it helps us understand their regulation.
Sure does. Okay, here's a few more things that temperament also is.
Okay.
We love to describe it as a window to understanding. I love that word picture so much.
It's a window.
But why do our kids do what they do? Temperament. And understanding their temperament is going to give us so much insight on that. Temperament is also kind of that oomph with which kids express themselves, and why some kids are very expressive while some might be a little bit tougher to read. One thing we always like to remind everybody: temperament traits are not good or bad, right? They all have assets and liabilities. They all have, one thing we loved at one stage, at another stage might present challenges for us. And so there's no right or wrong, good or bad temperament.
Exactly.
Yes. And then we do know that understanding temperament helps us as adults to guide our kids' behavior and to support that development.
Because we have one too.
Yes, we've got one. Just
we've got one
all up in here, all kinds of it.
Yes.
And we can't forget. I mean, Barb is always reminding us. Barb, our writer, is always reminding us. Temperament's a gift. It's genetic. We're born with it. And it's a gift that we get to go through life with. And the way we react to the world will be related to our temperament.
It is. And you, like you said, it is genetic. And it's impacted by our surroundings, by our environment, how the adults around us work with our temperament. And one of the things we said, I guess it might have been the second season, so season 7, we talked about temperament as our factory settings. Yes. So especially when we're tired or scared or sick or having a big emotion, we tap back into those factory settings. And when it comes to this season and regulation, when we get dysregulated, we revert right back to those factory settings. no matter how much we have, worked on our temperament, learned about our
Mhm.
temperament, had our parents try to teach us about our temperament. When we become dysregulated, boom, we are right back to those factory settings.
Mhm. Those defaults, right? The way
Yes,
we interact with the world, when everything's out of sorts, that's what we'll
mm,
go back. Those
we will.
defaults for sure.
Yes. All right. So, why do you believe that temperament is such a key when it comes to understanding regulation and guidance and discipline?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, uh, because Lori told me, is one reason.
And then you drank the Kool-Aid.
Yep, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, guys. I believe in it. No, as a parent, I've been in situations, and honestly, I'm fortunate not more, but I've been in some situations where I've really felt like I needed to advocate for my child,
Mhm.
and knowing their temperament made me so confident to do that. Like, I know my kid. I know I can anticipate how she will react. I can anticipate what he will do when we do
Mhm.
this, you know? Not that I know their every move, but I can anticipate the general patterns. And so it has made me really confident to be like, well, this isn't the best plan for my kids. Let's adapt that a little.
Yes.
And so that is one thing why I think it's so important. It gives us confidence to advocate. But I also think, having two kids who are similar in some ways, but they definitely have their own little quirks, and temperament is how I can understand those unique qualities about them and
Mhm.
honestly tailor my parenting. Like
I love that word.
yeah, like
Yeah.
things that worked with my daughter when she was a toddler.
Mhm.
I was like, okay, this is what you do with toddlers. Oh no, not all of them.
Yeah.
Just that one apparently.
Right, just that one.
Just that one. Because yeah, those aren't the things that my son is responsive to. And I know temperament is a part of that. And so I think, yeah, advocating for our kids and feeling confident about it. Like that's not something I would naturally feel confident about, but temperament
Mhm.
helps me feel that. And then yeah, just the ability to kind of tailor. I understand my kid. I know that I can kind of tailor things to them.
Mhm.
What about
Mm.
you? You have been a Kool-Aid dispenser of temperament being important.
Gosh,
How do you
you're
even
the
answer that?
words you used were perfect, honestly. Tailoring and giving you confidence and predicting their behavior. When I think about, gosh, let's see, how old is my oldest daughter? 20,
Mhm.
almost 25. So 23 and a half years of understanding how temperament can create more positive interactions, not just
Mm,
between her and I as the adult child, but her and her friends, her and her teachers, her and her childcare providers, her and her grandparents. Gosh, don't we all just have this inner need for someone to say, I get you? Like, I get you. And I think that
mm,
honestly is that piece where I think temperament allows me to say to a child, "I get you," and then allows me to say to someone else, "I want you to get my child too."
yes.
Just that and that sense. So I would say also the another word that maybe comes to mind is that personal feeling of self-confidence because someone gets
Mm.
me. It builds my
Oh.
self-esteem when someone gets me. I internally believe that I am worthy when someone
Mm,
gets me. So
mhm.
that piece of it too, where as a parent, when I understand my child's temperament, they have all of these internal feelings of self-worth and worthiness as a human being. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I mean, even in hearing you talk back through that, I think about the way it builds the relationship, right? Not just the feeling that it gives you when someone understands you, but, like, how I feel about that person who understands me.
Mhm, absolutely.
Yeah, the like, "You see me, I trust you, you see the good in me."
Mhm.
And I even think that with other adults, like, learning to understand other people's temperament or even, like, my nieces and nephews, like, the expectations I can come in
Mhm.
with, like, "Okay, your temperament is this way, you're slow to warm up, I'm not gonna expect a hug when I walk in the door." You
Exactly.
are high activity, okay, if we're hanging out, we're gonna do something physical.
Yes.
And so that yeah, the tailoring, but the way that building the relationship, whether that's
Mhm.
with our kids for guidance and discipline or
Yes.
anyone. It's for
Anyone.
everybody.
Yeah, it's for everyone. Temperaments for everyone. Oh, yeah.
Yes. One for you, one for you.
Yes.
Uh,
Oh.
so
Okay,
now I would say let's get back to regulation, right?
yeah, yeah. So we're in regulation, right? So I think what we're going to do is so Thomas and Chess shared with us 9 traits that
Mhm,
we really talked at length about in season 3. So if you want to go back and pick up really in-depth information about each trait, go back to season 3. And then when we think about each trait, we all get different portions, right?
mhm.
Yeah.
Did it get a little or a lot?
Mhm. And
Mhm,
when it comes to regulation, there is just several traits that, become really important when it comes to our child's behavior, but we're going to walk through them all,
mhm.
right? We're going
We're
to walk
gonna
through 'em all.
look at each of these traits, tiny bit of what it is, right? Little
Mhm.
reminder, and then how does that play out with regulation?
Yes.
So I'll start with 2 that
Okay.
are, I mean, they're siblings, if you
They
will,
are
in
siblings,
temperament.
yes.
They're closely related. So approach withdrawal, how we respond in a new situation or to new people, uh, that's that trait. And then adaptability, which is about how we handle kind of the unexpected or
Mhm.
novelty. Is that exciting or is that draining? Um, and so as we think about how our kids regulate, and remember we talked about cognitive regulation, right? Our attitude, our mindset, our attention. We've talked about behavioral regulation like our habits and also emotional regulation. And so
Mhm.
as we think about how those play out with adaptability and approach, I think of how it's basically what prompts you, right?
Mhm.
So what bumps up, as you say, like what bumps up against your temperament? What are the types of things that get kids dysregulated? Or I mean, even like I think if a child is high approach and
Mhm.
they're ready to jump into a situation, they might get overexcited about
Mhm.
something. And we might need to help temper them like, okay, remember the expectations when we get here. We're not just going to run around. Like, we're not just going to, we need to slow
Yes.
down a little or we have to sign in first. And so the types of things that get them dysregulated can vary based on whether they have a lot of adaptability, a
Mhm.
little, and then same thing with approach withdrawal, whether they're approaching or withdrawing.
Yes. So I
Mhm.
see in my head the child who is not adaptable. And when we ask them to do things spontaneously,
Mm,
boom, dysregulation occurs.
yes. Yes.
Same thing with the child who is withdrawing, really needs to think about, I need a little bit more information before I walk in this door. And maybe we as a parent or caregiver say say things like, "Hey, you know what? I know we were going to go do this. Now we're going to go do this." Boom, dysregulation can occur in that child.
That happens in my house, like, in
Yeah.
our family, every second of every day. My high adaptability is like, "Spontaneity, yeah!" And I have a child that is like, "Absolutely not."
Yeah.
Like, "No, thank you to that." And that child is the child who loses it
Mhm.
when we go to the dentist.
Oof. Yeah.
Right? New
Mhm.
environment, unfamiliar people, literally in my mouth, like in my very personal space.
Yes.
And she gets really dysregulated. She almost never behaves, and not that I don't even like to say behaves. She doesn't respond that way
Mhm.
very often, but in that situation, she's so overwhelmed and terrified and dysregulated.
Yes.
Um, and so that's temperament,
Mhm.
that's approach, that's adaptability. So what about the
Absolutely.
next one? What's another
Okay,
one?
so, activity level, when we look at that internal energy, did we get a little bit of internal energy or did we get a lot? So I think of when it comes to regulation, being in those situations where we can expend energy or the
Mhm,
expectation that adults might have of a child to not expend energy and sit still. So the child with a lower activity level, they can meet that expectation. They can sit quietly without fidgeting. The child who has a higher activity level, the adult has the expectation they need to sit quietly and not fidget. Oof, that bumps right up into their highly active temperament. Dysregulation occurs.
mhm.
A dysregulated child who is highly active, they might get the zoomies, right? Like, they need something to do, and long
Yes.
car rides, ooh, dysregulation happens.
Mhm.
And so it's
Mhm.
really about those expectations that we as adults have that, you know, bump into their temperament trait where it is that allow those opportunities for dysregulation to occur. And then how do we respond? Do we
Yes.
respond and say, "Hey, highly active child, too bad. You need to sit here and I'm not going to help you,
Mhm.
come down from your dysregulation." Um, and I think that when it comes to temperament and regulation, these are moments that allow us to really help and model for our
Yes.
child how to work with the temperament that they got.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I also see activity as a way, like, as a means to help people get regulated.
Mhm, absolutely.
So, like, I think about after a big meal, like,
Mhm,
if my co-parent and I, like, my partner and I eat a big meal, I am like, "Oh, we gotta sit here a while." He is like, "We gotta walk around a little bit."
uh-huh,
Like, and that feeling of like, "Oh, I'm uncomfortable." He wants to move to get comfortable, and I'm like, "I cannot move."
mhm. Yes,
Um, and so how we regulate, and you said something when you were describing this that I'm like, "Click, temperament, regulation, light bulb."
yes.
I have one.
Okay, I'm ready.
The definition that I liked in the first episode was about adapting, like, our behavior, our attitude, our emotions to a context, to a set of expectations, to a
Mm, mhm,
situation. And
mhm,
you said, right, when we have these expectations
mhm.
and they bump up against their temperament,
Yes.
right? That's like, of course it's dysregulation because the expectations don't meet their natural tendencies. Like, haha,
Exactly,
of course it is. Like,
exactly.
of course it is.
You're
That's the aha
forcing
I
my
needed about temperament.
temperament you are forcing my temperament to go against what my natural setting is.
Mhm. And when I'm a kid, right? When I'm
Yes.
a young child, I haven't learned a lot of skills yet about how to navigate the
Mhm,
world with strategies to,
mhm,
like, cope and adapt with my temperament. As adults, we're like, well, yeah, sometimes even though I'm an active adult, I have to sit quietly. And
mhm.
yes, but you've had a lifetime of building skills and experiences to practice those things.
Yes,
Yeah, just
absolutely.
okay, that was like I have, like, a visual formula in my head.
Okay.
Temperament, pumps up, regulation, expectations, all of it.
Yes,
It all makes
exactly.
sense now.
Okay, so this is
Oh.
gonna be the perfect segue into the intensity trait because I think that you probably can, like, visually see moments that your
Mm,
expectations or people's expectations of you bumped
mhm,
into your natural temperament setting of intensity.
mhm.
Got any examples?
A million,
A
like,
million.
only a million. I even think of, like, so I have high intensity, so that is our experience of emotion and our expression
Mhm,
of experience and emotion of, like, do we tend to be loud? Do we tend to be enthusiastic? Do we tend to be more on the lower end, a little more mild, subdued,
mhm.
easygoing, calm? And, I even think of, like, I've been in meetings where I get an idea. I mean, I've been in meetings with you where I get an idea and I can get so excited and enthusiastic and I'm just like like talking fast, like basically yelling, sometimes actually yelling. And sometimes you don't usually do this, but sometimes people are like,
Mm,
that is a
mhm.
lot. Like,
That is
which in all fairness, it is.
Mhm.
And be nice to me. Like, have your expectations, adjust them so that I
Yes.
don't feel, because then I can, if I feel like someone's really like, be excited, but calm down, okay? If I feel like that, I can get really like, "Oh," right?
Mhm,
And, like, hurt and dysregulated and,
mhm.
like, out of sorts because the expectation, it didn't match my, like, temperament and, like, my adaptability to that in that moment. So, I have a lot of examples where
I love
intensity
that.
comes
That's a
into
great
play.
example. Yes, and if someone didn't honor your intensity, but instead, kinda shushed it down,
Yes.
oof, that confidence, I've seen your confidence
Oh,
just fly
thank
out the
you.
door. There it went, like, that was an amazing idea, and
Mm.
now we can't follow through because her confidence just went out the door with that
Mm.
shushing or,
Yeah.
whatever.
And I think
Mhm.
even, like, how I have 2 intense children, which is funny because my husband is very mild in his intensity, so
Mhm.
you thought we'd get, like, a 50-50, but nope, we have
No.
2 loud, beautifully intense children, and, just the way they express, right? When
Mhm.
my daughter is dysregulated, you see it, you hear it, like, it's right there, it's easy to
Mhm.
read, honestly, versus, like, when my husband is, like, out of sorts, I have really had like, we've had to work together on our communication because he has to tell me
Mm.
he's
Mhm.
out of like, I'm having a hard time because I don't
Mhm.
pick up on it
Mhm.
because it's so subtle in his
Yes.
expression, and, so I'll be like, I don't know, here we go," like, going about life, and he's like, "Okay, actually, I'm having a really hard time." I'm like, "You are?" Like, "You are?"
You are?
Um, but again,
Mm.
the way we express and
Mhm.
experience that dysregulation looks different, and especially in our kids with
Yes.
their intensity. Their intensity is in such raw form.
It is, yes.
Mhm,
Okay, so I have a trait that I will share with you that you often can't see it, and that's regularity.
mhm. I
So
love when you talk about regularity. Like, let's
regularity
go.
is those biological rhythms, right? Well, you can't always see them like you do intensity. So our need to eat, our need to sleep, our need to use the bathroom, right? Those
Mhm,
are internal things. And so gosh, regularity is so sometimes regularity is one of those first key questions that we might ask a childcare provider when it comes to when
mhm,
they come and ask us about a guidance and behavior problem, or parents when they come and ask us a parenting question. Let's talk about your child's regularity. It is their need to sleep longer not being met, and that's why they're becoming dysregulated. Um,
mhm.
so a child that has a very regular biological rhythm. They are the child that you don't have to set a watch to because they are your watch. They eat the same amount every day at the same time. You know, you have to change their diaper at the same time every day. You know what time it is based on what's happening with their body. So let's say the expectation is we're in a long car ride and we can't stop the car, right? The
Mm,
child who is very regular now is hungry, and that might come out as screaming and crying in the car, and
mhm,
us in our adult mind thinking we only have 5 more miles. We only have 10 more miles. To the
mm.
child who's very regular, suddenly their dysregulation occurs, and you're the adult thinking, like, can't they just wait? Like,
Yeah,
I
like, just wait.
just wait, right? So their factory setting says, "Dude, it is 11:10. I eat and I poop at
Like,
11:01,"
now is the
right?
time.
So I love thinking about regularity as, again, one of those it's kind of that quiet, underlying temperament trait that has a lot of impact.
Mhm.
Is that baby hungry? And we've tried the textbook, some textbook that said you need to schedule your child, right? And you
Mhm.
don't feed them except for on schedule. Well, the child who is irregular, like, they're
Doesn't
really
fit.
hungry.
Yes.
They're not trying to, you know, not be scheduled. Their
Mhm,
body, their biological rhythm says, gosh, I'm really hungry. So
mhm.
bumping up against that factory setting, it's hard when it comes to regularity because as parents, we want to control what three things?
Eat, sleep, poop.
Eat, sleep, poop. We need to control those three things as adults. And
Mm.
when it comes to regularity and regulation, ooh, right. But like the temperament trait in this case wins every time.
Yes,
It just
yes.
does.
And the other
Yeah.
thing I'm thinking of with, like, the regulation component of it is, we talked about behavior regulation is often looks like habits.
Mhm.
When our behavior is regulated in, like, doing the things that we need to do, right? Like, we need to brush our teeth, like,
Yes.
we need to shower, we need to, like, personal hygiene type stuff, we need to eat, those things can come more naturally, right? Regulated habits
Mhm.
might come more naturally to someone who has a regular temperament, like a regular
Exactly.
rhythm. They can anticipate, I wake up at this time, regardless of the
Mhm.
alarm clock goes off. I'm
Yeah.
hungry at this time. And then versus the irregular, it
Mhm.
those habits look different. I have to focus a lot on routines
Mhm.
because I will not wake up at the same time without an alarm clock.
Yes.
And so I need the routine of the
Mhm.
pattern to regulate my behavior rather than this is the time because my body won't always give me the same time.
Mhm. Yes.
Looks so different for each of us.
Good.
I'll say, and then there's mood, which I feel like
Mm.
is spoken and unspoken, like it's both.
Mhm. Yes.
Um, and so mood is kind of that natural disposition. Some people say like serious or silly. Some might
Mhm.
say like optimistic or pessimistic, however people kind of define it and look at it a different way. But how we think about our attitude, right?
Mhm.
And I think of that cognitive. That's where I really think about mood is that cognitive part of regulation of like people are like, "Ugh, well, you need to change your attitude.
Mm.
Well, you need to, and that people just assume someone who's pessimistic is bad, right? It's negative. It's just negative. And I think we have even some colleagues who are low mood, and in some cases, I'm like, come on, like chip her up a little. But I
Mhm.
also see real strength in them in that they can anticipate, like they
Yes.
can see the worst case scenario and prepare for it. And I see that in like that can be the case in kids too. The kid
Mhm.
that is like this isn't what I wanted. This is not like, I mean, it's not that great, right?
Yes.
But that kid also, they're perceptive of those things. They notice them. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, as we think about that cognitive regulation, I think about a lot with mood.
Yes.
Does it tend to be a chipper or does it tend to be a little more serious? And again, thinking about our expectations as parents
Mhm.
and how they regulate in that attitude, like they don't need to just be chipper cheery if that's not who they are. And if you have a kid that's always chipper cheery, you might have to take them, as Rob Copeland reminded us, to heed caution.
Yes.
um,
Yes.
yeah, so I think that mood is really really closely related. That was hard to say. Closely related to cognitive regulation.
Yes. I agree. I hadn't thought about it that way. But
Yeah.
I definitely
I hadn't
agree.
until I said it. So
Yes. Those things that pop into our brain and we just never know what's coming out on this podcast.
you can't be
So
sure.
so I'm going to do the next two together as well. So this is persistence and distractibility. So distractibility is that idea that how much do you notice the little things? So distractibility, you're working on something and you catch the spider crawling down the wall out of the corner of your eye. Did you notice it or did you not notice it? And then persistence says, do you keep working or do you go get rid of the spider or analyze the spider, whatever you do when it comes to spiders, right? So they kind of go hand in hand together. They're siblings. I like how you said that.
Mhm.
So persistence and distractibility, when we look at that in regulation, again, two very key players in terms of how can we stay regulated if we are a persistent temperament, things that persist that we can finish, finishing a
Mhm.
task, we like that. Being able to finish the tasks helps us stay regulated. If we're working on a task and someone says, oh, time's up, let's go, let's go change tasks now. Let's say you're working on a puzzle and you're very persistent and you want to finish the puzzle. Someone I know likes puzzles. And so
Yep, me.
and so someone says, Mackenzie, you cannot finish that puzzle. It is time for us to leave this place altogether. And actually, you're
Incorrect.
never going to get to finish this puzzle because we're leaving. Ooh,
Incorrect.
dysregulation occurs in Mackenzie's mind, right?
Yeah.
So, as we look at regulation and persistence and distractibility, the idea that we can, I like what you said, utilize the temperament trait to remain regulated
Mhm,
or recognize that it is part of that trait that is dysregulating us.
mhm.
We can become dysregulated and become even more persistent. Like
Yes.
if I am persistent and now I'm dysregulated, I will finish this puzzle. I like my feet are in cement and I am now so dysregulated. There is no way you're moving me away from this puzzle table. Mm-mm.
Yep. And,
Mhm.
it's like 45 minutes past my child's bedtime and we're not home yet. I
Yes.
need 3 more pieces of this puzzle. Like, I
Yes.
still can't leave. And again, I can't
Mhm.
meet the expectation of the situation, or I
Mhm.
could. I should. But when I'm dysregulated, right, that natural tendency of my temperament says, like, I'm not gonna meet that because I have a natural tendency to, like, "Well, I'll just find a few more. Like, I'm not done.
Mhm. I know. I can do
I'm
one
not
more
done."
thing. I can do one more
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
Yes. Mhm.
Well, and that distractibility piece too of how easily we're pulled away from
Mhm.
something. And I think of Barb. Sometimes I'm like, oh, poor Barb. She has to work with us all the time.
'Cause we're so
No,
distractible.
we are. But
Mhm.
she has very
Mhm.
low distractibility. And so she can just like, well, I'm just doing this. You guys are doing that. And I'm
Mhm.
tuned out. And I just think like, what a strength that would be. Like, you don't get distracted and out of sorts and
Mhm.
all those things. But we also, I mean, strengths
Yes.
in each one, right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. And then our last one is sensitivity. So a lot of times is related to our five senses.
Mhm.
Some people also look at it as emotional sensitivity.
Mhm.
Some researchers separate that and some put them together, right? That there's
Yes.
yes. But thinking about the the word that comes to mind is stimulation. Like that
Mhm.
response to stimulation, does your body and your brain need a lot of stimulation to get a reaction or even just a little?
Yes.
Even just a little. And I think of, we always talk about like the line in the socks, the
Ah,
tag in the shirt, right?
yes.
And so that for a child who or an adult, whoever, that has very high sensitivity, those little perceptions of those
Mhm.
things, right? I cannot think right now because it's freezing in here. I can't listen to this. Like I can't listen to this
Yes.
speaker. I can't pay attention. I'm freezing.
Mhm.
Um those types of things, that sensitivity to
Mhm.
the sensory input, the stimulation around you, it can affect how easy or hard it is to regulate. I think of like people's attention and
Yes.
our emotion, like, well, yeah,
Or
I'm
the
hungry.
baby that is in the room
Mhm.
that is so loud that their dysregulation becomes that moment of they're totally shut down,
Mm,
right?
disappeared.
They disappeared. Or the
See
baby that is so dysregulated that they cry and cry and cry and cry, and
Mhm,
what are the tools that we use to get their bodies back into regulation because they were so sensitive to maybe it was a loud sound.
mhm.
Maybe, oh gosh, in
Yes.
Emily's case, it was the fire drill, right, at the school,
Oh, yes.
so
Mhm.
mhm,
And I also think of how, we talked about each trait individually, but how traits pair together, right?
mhm,
And so I think of like feeding my distractible infant, in like right in a loud place that was like, oh, I got to see everything. Like that was
mhm,
hard. But a child that is distractible and sensitive to those
mhm,
things, instead of just needing to look around, they might be wailing, even though they're
mhm.
starving. But like what? There's so
Yes,
much, right? Versus a child that's not distractible, right? And so we know that our traits interact, right? They
they
don't
do.
stand alone. And
No,
so when we talk about one leaning this way and one can affect this, sometimes they pair together to create a behavior.
they do,
Um, and the
they
way
do,
and it affects how our kids regulate and how we regulate.
and
That's
how
for
we
sure.
but we do wanna take a little bit of time and just share that not everything, is negative about traits because there are some
Yes.
super like you brought out, Barb's strength, but there is positive stuff, and we can validate our children's temperament traits, and again, these are temperament gifts, like Barb says.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there are definitely strengths and positive things. So, let's play a little game. How about you wanna play a
Yes.
game? Alright.
I do.
So,
I love a game.
I'm gonna say a word, and I'm gonna say the less positive word, the negative word, and you come
Okay.
up with a word, that's more positive and can validate their temperament trait, alright?
Okay.
Because sometimes we might just think, well, intensity, it just makes them loud, right? But we wanna see that there
Mm,
are assets. Okay, so loud, let's
yes.
try that. Loud,
Okay.
loud, loud.
I have the flip side of this because I have been called this my whole life. Um, I would say enthusiastic,
Mm,
right? Or
love
even
that
like
word.
easy to read.
Ooh,
Mhm.
yes.
Like I know where you're at. You're easy to read.
Yes. Oh, love
Mhm.
it. Okay. Ugh, they're so wild. Ugh.
Ooh. Mm. They're busy.
Mhm,
Right? They have a lot to do. There's
mhm,
just so many things and yeah, is that curiosity? Like,
mhm.
oh, they're curious or oh, their body loves to move. Their body feels so good moving.
Yes, energetic.
Yeah,
Yes.
energetic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, picky. Picky.
Mm,
They're so picky. Picky, picky, picky.
they're careful and selective.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, last one. Stubborn.
I immediately, like, my eyes immediately shifted. I'm like, "Don't. We don't need to say that."
Stubborn.
Ugh. Um, Committed,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
adults, we think that's a great thing, like,
Yeah.
no, they're really committed to those values, or they're really committed to that project,
They
not
are.
stubborn. No, they're
Yes.
really committed to that.
Yeah.
Yes, and we
Awesome.
do. And as we think about when we look at those 9 traits, we're kinda like, "This can get you dysregulated, this could get you dysregulated," which wasn't the intent.
Right.
But that there are assets, and yes, in some cases, we talked about how if you're highly regular, that can make it a little easier, like, your
Mhm.
natural tendencies lean toward developing regular
Yes.
habits.
Yes.
That can come a little more naturally for you. If you are, um a low persistence, right? I can go with the flow, right? Like, I don't get too worked up because I can adapt to most,
Yes. Mhm.
like, changes in things, or I don't feel too strongly about that. I have a
Mhm.
sister-in-law who is the easiest going person I've ever met. Like, sure, sure, and high adaptability
Mhm.
and low persistence. She's like, "Yeah, I mean, however it goes." Um and so that is there's strengths in our temperament that do give us positives for regulation, and they create situations that can make it more likely, right?
Yeah.
Assets and liabilities for
Assets and
temperament.
liabilities, absolutely. Okay,
Mhm.
so let's talk about strategies, right? We have some
Yes.
excellent strategies. These are some of my favorite strategies to talk through, and maybe it's because it's one of my favorite classes to teach.
Yes.
Maybe, this is like, I love this class. But okay, so Mary Sheedy Cat has 2 books, right? She's got Raising Your Spirited Child and Raising Your Spirited Baby. She actually has more. She's got
I
some
would say
books
there's
on
more. There's
sleep.
like a sleepless
There's more.
one, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But what her basic premise is that adults can teach children skills, and we should, right? That
Mhm.
help them get through how do we work with the temperament traits our parents gave us, right?
Yes.
Because we know naturally we can look at any nursery in any hospital across the world and know that children come with their temperament traits. We didn't teach them how to
Mhm.
be intense in the nursery at the hospital, right?
Yes.
They get this. So
That was a
as
gift.
adults, it was a gift. It was a gift. So as adults, our job then is to recognize their traits and recognize what are some strategies that we can teach them to support
Mhm.
and honor the traits that we gave them, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
And like that we have strategies and that are informed by their
Mhm,
temperament
mhm.
that promote regulation.
Yes.
Right? We can use that temperamental understanding to inform how we can help them regulate.
Yes.
Mhm.
All right.
All right, let's hear one.
Okay, so one of my favorites to talk about is repetition. And I want you to think about this in terms of a repeated motion
Mhm.
over and over and over and over and over. Okay. So now I'm going to take
Mhm.
you all the way back to in the womb. The child is in the womb.
Mhm.
What is a repetitive movement? What's a repeated motion that the child in the womb feels?
I think of 2.
Okay.
They hear the
Mhm.
heartbeat, like boom,
Yes.
boom, 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 but they also like the walking, right? Like that
Mhm.
a fetus is getting swayed back and forth in the
Mhm.
womb.
Yes, exactly. So now, boom, they come out of the womb totally dysregulated. It is cold out here. I am right. So I am wet. I am
It's
not
bright.
snuggled up anymore. Right. So what have they heard for 9 months? They've heard and felt that whoosh, whoosh, whoosh,
Mm.
whoosh, right? So one of the first things that a nurse taught me on my first child was this idea that there are these S's and they're all
Mm.
repetitive. They're all repetitive, like, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, their temperament, repetitive, regulation. The idea that we
Yes.
shush, shush, shush. It sounds like the heartbeat. Shush. So
Mhm.
when my daughter was dysregulated, I would shush, 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 shush,
Mhm.
shush. And I would sway just like it felt like in the womb, right?
Yes.
I would wrap her and swaddle her tight, and I like, I
Mhm.
can feel myself swaying back and forth
Right,
right now.
I know, I'm, like, doing a little, yeah.
Okay. But that rocking back and forth is something that babies felt for 9 months, and I know that
Mhm.
when I'm standing in a grocery line or whatever, and I hear a child crying, like, I
Yeah.
start to sway. But you know what? I enjoy a rocking chair as an adult.
Mm.
Right? If
Yes.
I feel dysregulated, frustrated, upset, I often find myself sitting in my rocking chair. Right?
Mm.
Where did I try to put my babies to sleep? in the rocking chair? Where did I try to put my
Mm.
toddlers to sleep, right? In my rocking chair. So this
Yes.
idea of this repetitive motion, this rocking, rocking, swaying,
Mhm,
swaying, repeated sounds and movements, right?
mhm. And I even think of, like, I sometimes find myself, like, even rubbing my daughter's back,
Mhm.
right? That, like,
Yes.
she's a little older, so we don't rock anymore, but,
Yes.
like, the repetition of just, like, oh, little circles, and
Yes.
that we're giving that, like, little bit of I mean, I'm physically like,
Yes,
"Huh,
I know.
huh," like, I don't know,
Yeah.
but yeah, the repetitive motion.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Okay, so now I'm gonna bring you up to adulthood, right? Because we might say, "Oh, that's so great for kids. Yes, that's a great idea." But as adults, we still do these things, okay?
mhm,
And we typically do them because of it's just how our inborn nature was, right? What else did infants in utero do? They suck their thumbs. Right?
mm,
Because sucking and swallowing is an essential need. They need to learn how to do that to eat, get
mhm,
nourishment. It continues. Sometimes infants still suck their thumbs outside of the womb. Sometimes we give them pacifiers, but sucking, part of that natural movement is repetitive, right? Think about
mhm,
that. It's movement. As adults, what do we continue to do? We chew gum, we suck on candy,
mhm.
we smoke
Sunflower
cigarettes,
seeds.
we right? We and
Yeah.
there's a little bit of scientific-y nerdiness to that, and that has to do with the soft palate in your mouth and the brain sensors that are so close to it. So there's
Ah.
your little nerdism for the week
I
is
love when
that
you geek out about the brain.
right? Is that those sensors are right there in
Mm,
the soft palate. So I think about how did I try to regulate my dysregulated child? I might give her her pacifier. I might put the thumb back in the mouth. My preschoolers, I might go have them sip on a straw, go drink
mm,
water out of a straw. I might walk with them to the drinking fountain and get a drink. Moving that mouth, that repetitive swallowing,
mhm,
trying to use their mouth and those brain sensors. And then when they get to high school or middle school and they've got those standardized tests, what do we sometimes allow them to
mm.
do? We sometimes allow them to have water, right? Keep
Yes.
hydrated, but also that movement of swallowing.
Mhm.
I've tried to convince, my daughter's schools along the way to let them chew gum at least during test taking, because that
Oh,
honestly, again,
yeah.
helps them regulate that
Mhm.
repetitive movement, repetition, repetition.
Mm.
Okay, we
Absolutely.
gotta move on. Next.
Okay,
Okay,
hold on, hold on. I
repetition.
I don't want you to move on yet 'cause
Okay.
I'm having a moment. I also think as adults, this happens, right? Like, I think of the shaking leg or the clicking pen
Mhm.
or right? That people as adults will do this repetitive motion, and I
Yes.
even think, like, this is maybe a little bit of a stretch, but, like, are habits repetitive?
Mhm.
Like, that
Yeah.
kind of by definition, right? Okay, repetition. Anyway.
Yes. Yes.
Well, then
Yes.
the next one, right,
Okay, I just gotta
is
say one more thing. I'm gonna back us
okay, one more. Add
one
one
more,
more
okay.
time.
What is the first thing that we take away from babies when they magically turn a certain age?
Mm, we take the thumb, we take the
We take the
pacifier, we take the
right?
stuff.
So we take the stuff that's repetitive, that's helping them regulate, and do we make a conscious effort to give them something else to replace
Mm,
that repetition,
mhm.
right? Just a thought. I just wanna toss that out there.
Okay, I
No
have one more. I'm
no
having
soapboxy. Yeah.
one more aha.
Okay.
My husband and I have been talking about my son has moved he's a toddler, he moved to,
Mhm,
like, a twin bed, uh, and he's having a hard time going to sleep at night.
mhm.
Like, we've never had trouble with that, and he's just lays awake and he talks, and we've stopped sitting in the rocking chair. We sit in his
Oh.
bed. We sit in his bed
Mm.
and we read a
Mhm.
book and we, maybe sing or whatever. We've stopped sitting in the rocking chair. That's what's changed. And I
Uh-huh.
literally did not think of that until right now. I need to call my
Uh-huh.
husband.
Yeah. And we're
Alex.
done. Let's finish recording.
Okay, okay.
Okay, okay. Alright.
Okay, now we can move on.
Now we can move on. Yes. Oh gosh.
Oh, so the next one is deep breathing,
Yes.
which I mean, hello, our favorite strategy, stop, breathe, talk.
Mhm. Stop,
Um,
talk.
But encouraging that in our kids, and I remember hearing you, like, vividly when I was, like, an intern. I remember you teaching the class that focuses on these strategies, and I remember you talking about even like an infant or a small child that we're holding in our arms, you're like, when you deep breathe, our
Mhm.
heartbeats regulate together, right? Like
Mhm.
that right? Physically,
Yes.
our bodies, like the science of that nerds me out real quick. But yeah, that like we can take deep breaths, and especially if we're like having physical contact with a child, uh, we can take deep breaths that will help them take deep breaths.
Mhm.
What else would you add about deep breaths?
Oh gosh, just last week, my middle daughter, she's 22, she was anxious,
Mm.
and I was getting dysregulated over something, and I was frustrated with her, and all of a sudden I heard her shallow breathing, rapid breathing, and I thought, "Oh my gosh,
Mm.
she is super anxious and dysregulated. I cannot match that. I
Mm.
need to help her get more regulated." And so I started to do deep breathing. I was just next to her and I would take a deep breath before I would start to talk. And let me tell you, I wanted to not speak so politely at her.
Yes.
But
Ugh.
hearing her shallow, rapid breathing, I thought, okay, I need to take a deep breath and first regulate myself. And then I'm going to continue to speak slowly with these deep breaths to try to help her get more air into her body because she's so
Yes.
dysregulated right now.
Need
Mhm.
oxygen in your brain.
Oxygen. Yes. Mhm.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, and then movement, right? Like
Mhm.
exercise. And I mean, hello, highly active temperaments, like,
Yes.
heyo. But even for kids with low activity level, this can be a strategy for helping them regulate, right?
Yes. Yes. I
Mhm.
used to do this with my preschool class. The class would be getting out of control, dysregulated, loud,
Mm.
crazy, and I would throw on a record. You know what a record is, right? And it was
Yes.
it was a record, and that was the only time I played that record typically was when things were getting out of control.
Oh.
And the super cool thing was, like, it was a dance record to some characters, and at the end, I would start to turn it down lower and lower and lower, and we would start to deep breathe at the end of the record, and so we got this twice, right? So we got the exercise and the
Mm.
movement to help them start to
Mhm.
re-regulate, and then we would end all laying on the floor deep breathing. And so, like, that was
Mm.
even before I knew about temperament, so,
Yes.
now that I think about it, I just
Part
kinda
of you
chuckle, I'm
knew.
like, "Huh, yeah, yep, we needed to move."
Yes. Well, and sometimes even like I've said like my son hits, and that is hard for me. But even the expectation, the allowance, the whatever
Mhm.
of like, okay, we're having a time, like let's go outside, let's go on a walk. Like, right?
Yes.
Like I've had my daughter in the doctor's office in a situation she does not enjoy. Like I literally will stick my leg out from the chair and so she can jump back and forth over it.
Mhm.
Right? Like, and so just finding opportunities like, okay, things are a little out of whack for some kids, let's get moving.
Yes.
And that can help us. I've
Yes.
skipped down the hallway on picture day with my child who was terrified to have their picture taken. And we just skipped down the hallway together
Mhm.
because we needed to regulate.
Yes, which ties right into the next one, which is change
Mm,
of scenery. Okay, so
mm.
this can be done with an infant, a toddler, a preschooler, all the way up to an older, teen, right? Okay, you can
Older
just
adults too.
older adults too, yeah. I sometimes just need a change of scenery, right?
Mhm.
And go hide in the closet. So we can literally just turn the infant to a different wall. We can literally
Mm.
take the toddler by the hand and do 2 of them, right? We can march to a different room. We can
Yes.
hop to a different room. But we're changing the scenery so that they stop being in the middle of or seeing what it is that is making them so dysregulated.
Mhm.
Sometimes we take the toy away, but what
Mm.
needs to happen is we need to move the child away.
Yes.
The toy is what's making the child upset, so I'm gonna take the toy away. Actually, it's the space now, this space, this whole
Mm.
moment in time, I need a different room to be in.
Yes. I
Um,
actually just told you a story before we
yes.
started recording about taking my son was just real mad about something, and
Mhm,
we were out to eat, and he was doing, like, a little screechy thing, and I was like, "Okay, this is really disruptive in here." And so I took him out almost a little bit, not embarrassment, that's too strong a word, but just like, "Oh, this is bothering other people.
mhm.
Like, let's be considerate." And so I took him outside, and then, yeah, wasn't too long that we kinda came around, like,
Yes,
that change of scenery, yeah. Even like,
yes,
I'm gonna talk to you over in the hallway.
yes,
I'm going to bring you with me to walk out to the car.
yes,
And yeah, same thing with our
yes.
older kids too. Like, you know what? Let's not talk about this. If things were heated in the kitchen, even with my spouse, if
Yeah.
I got frustrated with you in the kitchen, when we talk about it, let's sit in the living room.
Absolutely.
Change the scenery.
Yeah.
Love that. Mhm.
All right, you have to do the last one because you were telling me about how it really works with your son.
Yes, my son, which I'd pause, caveat. Lori and I and our colleagues, we have lots of parenting tools, right? We love sharing them with you all. We continue to learn them as we put together podcast seasons and things. We have all these tools, and sometimes I still feel like I don't know what to do next. Like I don't know.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know.
Exactly. Well,
And that's
that
kind
wasn't the right tool.
yeah, that wasn't it.
That
Or
was
that
not.
wasn't it for this kid, right? I said earlier,
Yes.
that worked for my daughter when she's a toddler. Oh, okay,
Yes.
that's not how it works for you. Um, and so my son responds, the strategy is humor. That is, I have been like in a lot of situations when he expresses frustration, and I've been like, I am having trouble helping you regulate. He responds to humor.
Mhm.
We get silly, we and tickling, to a point that we're like enjoying it, and just even the most ridiculous stuff, like you don't want to go to bed. Is it because you want to sleep in the garbage? Right? Oh, is it because you want to sleep in the tree?
Mhm.
And just like no, no,
Mhm.
but it gets silly. It gets out, right? We talk about distraction being a great
Mhm.
tool. Um, and humor is a lot of times a form of distraction, and right, it alleviates some of the pressure of the
Mhm.
conflict. And yeah, when we think again, conflict, the expectations aren't matching what's happening.
Mhm.
That's prime definition of dysregulation. So
Yes.
how can we help our kids regulate? One of them is humor.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I
Mhm.
really, again, just kudos to Mary Shidi Krasinka for giving us these strategies because they go a long way. Like I said, you can lump them together, do 2 or 3 at a time. One works really well for the particular child. And again, it's to me, these are fabulous ways to really teach the child. I mean, what child can't learn humor, right? I mean,
Yes.
now he can learn to say to his buddy, "Oh, you didn't wanna do that. Is that because you wanna you want to
Yeah.
sleep in the
You want to go in the
garbage?"
garbage.
Yeah.
Always
But these are
garbage.
all things that they can take on themselves. They can
Mm,
recognize they need a change of scenery. They can recognize
yes.
they need to hop up and down. They can recognize they need to take a deep breath. They can recognize I need to go have a big drink of water and take 4 swallows in a row.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm. We're building their skills.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm. Yes, we just love to talk temperament.
We do.
Actually, we maybe love to talk temperament a little too much. Just got a little long.
I know. Is it maybe a
My
two-part series?
bad, guys.
I don't know.
But
Oopie.
we wanna bring in our well, not our producer this season, our writer, Barb Dunswanson. We love her thoughts on regulation and temperament. Hi, Barb.
Hey, everybody. I just think about everything you've mentioned, and the thing that resonates the most with me is experience.
Oof.
Mm,
Yeah,
Everything that happens for us is experience based.
it
And when
is.
I think about young people and the kind of behaviors we see or the emotions that they express, if we truly understand the temperament that precedes the emotion or comes before the behavior, then we can look at it as problem solving
Mhm.
rather
mm.
than an issue for discipline. We look at things
Yes.
much less negatively if we can look at whatever behavior or emotion that's expressed, if we can look at it from a lens of their individual temperament.
I
Yes.
love
And
that.
you've set the whole stage for that discussion, but I think another component is labeling.
Mhm.
Mm,
When others don't understand our individual child's temperament, they can tend to very quickly label our child.
Yes.
And those labels will not help any child to feel good about themselves or to become re regulated if, in fact, they've become dysregulated. So,
Mhm.
kind of
yes.
removing the labels and
Mhm.
yet having and honoring individual temperament, wonderful resource to have as a parent.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, Awesome. Thanks so much, Barbie. Yes, that experience
I
component.
love that word. Yeah, experience.
Mhm.
Yep, definitely.
Yes. And I would say, and that's like perspective on perspective. Like
Yeah.
Barb's perspective. Barb's giving us perspective on having perspective.
Yes, that's awesome. Thanks, Barb.
Excellent.
You're welcome.
Yes. Thanks so much. Yeah, so we get chatty about
I
temperament.
know.
Well, and looking at how each of us we're individuals, and the way that regulation looks for us, and the way that regulation looks for our kids, and the way that dysregulation looks.
Yes.
Temperament's a big part of that, and even how we regulate. That temperament is what is going to make it individual for each of us in regulation. So we get to keep looking ahead in the season next, right? Our next
Yes.
episode here coming
Yeah.
right up.
Yeah, and so we're going to look at how we can create an environment that promotes regulation. So what are some things that we can do around us that help to really promote regulation?
Yes, and
Yes.
we get to I just like snorted a little. I'm so excited I snorted. We get to talk about a theory that I love.
That's
And
right.
so stay tuned for that.
All right. Yes. So thanks for joining us today at the Science Parenting Podcast. And hey, if you like our content, please just take a moment to give us a 5-star rating in the podcast app. This actually helps other people find our podcast, and also helps our supervisors know that this is worth our time and energy, right?
Yes, please do come along with us as we tackle the ups and downs, the ins and outs, and the research and reality all around the science of parenting.
The Science of Parenting is hosted by Lori Cohosts and Mackenzie Johnson, produced by Mackenzie DeYoung, with research and writing by Barbara Dunn Swanson. Send in questions and comments to parenting@iastate.edu and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. For the full non-discrimination statement or accommodation inquiries, go to www.extension.iastate.edu/diversity/ext.